I believe we're waiting on 2 more EC members to join us in this virtual room.
Are you recording?
Alyssa, I still haven't received an email from Eleanor. I just found my other calendar link. So I'm not sure if others are still having trouble getting in.
We've been
Just
emailing
sent
everyone.
I just sent an email to Robert and Carolyn and Lindsay.
Perfect.
Are we recording?
We are recording.
All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and call the Monday, October 27th, 2025 Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative Executive Committee meeting to order. And I apologize that we've had some clunkiness getting started here, but it looks like we are getting close and getting closer to having a quorum. Let's see. So
Have a quorum.
do we have a quorum?
now with the 3 of you?
3 of us. Okay, so there are 3 of electeds on board, so we do have a quorum for the meeting. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll be awaiting Councilmember Cox to join us. Will be joining us for Lacey. Should be coming up next. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with the agenda. For the first thing was, again, call to order. And so we've got the approval of the agenda. If you have a chance to look at the agenda pack, we have approval. Motion to approve the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? So we'll go ahead and the voice vote to go ahead and approve the agenda as published. Looking for some direction here. So,
Motion to approve.
Second.
all right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Great. And then we have the minutes from the last meeting. We should just probably have a consent calendar next time. We have the minutes from the previous meeting from the July 28th, 2025. So we need approval of the minutes from that meeting. So a chance approval of that. A motion to approve.
Is that a motion or are you asking for a motion?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, no
I'm asking
problem.
for a motion.
Yes, I moved.
May I have a
approve the
motion
meeting
to
minutes.
approve the minutes from the July 28th, I'm going to get this together here, guys. 2025 meeting. Thank you, Emily, or Commissioner Klaus.
Second.
No problem.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. So the next order of business is we do have public comment portion here, and I understand that we have 2 people that have signed up for public comment. So who's directing? Is Karen? Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Karen, will you please facilitate public comment?
Yes, we'll start with Tom. I think we can hear you, Tom.
Okay, can you hear me now? That's the
Yes.
same as-
And I don't know if you can
And
turn your
you should
camera
start.
on, but it says it's enabled.
Yeah, I was able to turn it on. Thank you. So thanks for giving me a couple of minutes here. I just wanted to summarize as a board member of Thurston Climate Action Team. I wanted to summarize some of our recent activities so you all are kind of familiar with what we've been up to the last couple, 3-4 months. First of all, I wanted to, and I think you'll hear more about this later on in the meeting, but Paris McCluskey has done a great job with our Amplifying Community Voices program. The purpose is for the purpose of expanding community engagement and influence over local public policies related to climate change and climate action. For this, we got funding from the Washington Department of Commerce, and we're currently working under a contract with the city of Tumwater. We worked with Thurston Public Schools, got 65 high school and middle school students involved in these discussions, as well as the cities of Lacey, Tumwater, Olympia, and Thurston County, for whom we did a series of community assemblies between October 24 and June 25, connected with about 850 people, got a whole bunch of detailed responses generated, specifically focused on the comprehensive planning process, which, as we all know, for the first time this year will include a climate chapter. Then with the city of Tumwater, we have community assemblies, 2 of them. We did one on October 11th. We've got another one coming up on November 12th. And Paris is here, and I'm sure he'll fill you in on more about that. I want to tell you about Cooling Thurston program. The purpose of that was to protect low-income seniors from extreme heat and cold, and particularly low-income tenants in apartment buildings, yeah, and also to prevent high energy bills. We have received funding from Front and Centered, and as a result, we were able to install 51 portable heat pumps in those rental units. Next, we had a very successful United for Climate fundraiser on September 20th, raised about $12,000. Yay! So we can continue doing our great work. We had an overflow crowd, which was pretty cool. And then finally, I'll be starting work in a more serious, focused way on a campaign we're calling the HEAT campaign, Home Energy Affordability for Thurston. And I'll be working with apartment building tenants. And the goal is to increase their energy efficiency and to reduce their energy bills. So that's my brief report about what we've been up to. I just wanted to make sure executive committee members were aware of that, and be glad to respond to any questions in chat or whatnot. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That's been a lot. I appreciate the information that you provided. That's a lot of good work that you have been working on. So thank you for taking the time to share that. So, and welcome, Carolyn. Thank you for figuring out the whole Teams thing. So we just got started here. So we just took care of the approval of the agenda and the minutes, and now we're into the public comment portion. So Tom Crawford just spoke, and so we've got another speaker coming up, public comment. So, and that is, and then Karen's taking care of that. So.
All
Right.
right, thank you. It sent me down a Microsoft legal agreements rabbit hole. And I was
Oh my
like,
goodness. Sorry. Yeah, do you want to go ahead, Paris, with the comments? We can see you're muted.
Yeah,
if you-
sure.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so I am Paris McCluskey, community organizer at Thurston Climate Action Team. And I have, in collaboration with your speaker today, Faduma Fido, implemented a couple of community assemblies here in Thurston County, and then in collaboration with City of Tumwater and Alyssa Jones Wood, implemented one a community assembly for Tumwater residents, and then we'll be doing another one, as Tom said, in November. So I just wanted to make myself available to the executive committee. If you have questions about local applications of community assembly work, yeah, I'm here to answer any questions you have. So I just wanted to say I'm here, and feel free to ask me anything you want.
Super. All right.
Thank you, Paris.
Right. So it looks like we're going on to the next item on our agenda then. Let's see. What's that?
Carolyn has her virtual hand up.
Okay. Carolyn. Yes, Carolyn.
Hi, was anybody else having trouble hearing Paris?
No,
We did, no.
he just said that he's available. He's conducted community assemblies. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm having trouble. Everything is cutting out.
Mhm.
I could direct message Carolyn if that would help move things along.
But I wonder if she'll be able to hear the rest of the meeting, because the next portion of our meeting is we do have a speaker that'll be coming up. So hopefully that Carolyn will be able to hear the speaker.
I'm going to try leaving the meeting and coming back and see if it gets any better. Because I just can't participate with what I'm receiving at this end. It just sounds like bop, 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 bop. That's it. Partial syllables, very clipped.
All right. Well, while we wait, or we don't, we'll probably let's go ahead and continue with the meeting. And so then our next item that we have, would like to introduce, Karen, are you going to introduce her, or do I introduce?
I can introduce.
Okay, well, Alyssa, take it.
Faduma is from Faduma is from People Economy Lab. We had this is actually a item coming to the executive committee because the community advisory work group heard a presentation from her on the same topic a number of months ago, and they reached a consensus to suggest this for the EC to hear from Faduma as well. And Faduma, if you want to introduce yourself in more detail, feel free, and the floor is yours.
Oh, Alyssa, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen first, and then we can get started. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't see you guys.
Yes, we can
Yes.
see.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Faduma Fido. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am a lab leader with People's Economy Lab. And thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you today about collaborative governance and more specifically about community assemblies. And I am excited to share some of our work on how community assemblies can help align community voice with government action and processes, which is a key part of collaborative governance. This work is, I do this work through People's Economy Lab, and we basically design processes for belonging and community inclusion, and we transcend access from privilege to equity, agency into cooperative, decision-making to more participatory, and ownership to more common instead of private. And so our mission is simple but yet powerful, which is to connect leaders and projects that reshape local economies towards justice, sustainability, and regeneration. And so our vision is a future where economies are community-centered. They're rooted in democracy, equity, and collective well-being, which is at the heart of climate justice as well. And so one of the most important things I would like you to take away from this conversation, among many, is that the economy isn't neutral. It's a set of choices, and the question is whose values are driving those choices. And so when we think about the economy, we also think about it in terms of sort of like what we do to our lived environment and the level of extraction and burning and dumping that occurs and that has harmed our ecosystem, as well as our human activities and sort of production as in GDP, and our means to be able to make a living and participate in our community. And so a key lesson is that governance without belonging doesn't work, which is very different from the capitalistic system we have right now, which is about individualistic and about competition and profit for all. And so othering is systemic, and it's embedded in policy, language, and processes. And if people feel othered, invisible, disposable, and unheard, no amount of outreach and community engagement can help build trust. And so that to say is that belonging is part of infrastructure, and engagement in community engagement is just one of its instruments. But when it comes to co-governance, it actually depends on it. And so when we say collaborative governance, we're saying that we're working together collaboratively through not just creating outcomes together, but deciding sort of the initial questions, the initial scoping, the initial design of the journey towards a policy or a program. And so what we like to say is that we need leaders. We don't need leaders with a grand vision, but we do need leaders who are able to inspire others to envision together. And so today, in terms of collaborative governance, we have adopted the definition from Partners in Dignity Rights and Race Forward, and that collaborative governance is a collection of participatory models and practices where government and communities can work together, whether through informal or formal or informal structures or models. Community assemblies are seen as formal infrastructures, and in order to be able to collectively make policy decisions, co-create programs, and meet community needs. And so in this essence, co-governance is a practice, it's a mindset, it's an infrastructure, and it's at the heart of democracy. And so the model ensures that communities most impacted by policy decisions have the power to shape them, not to simply respond to them. And so in terms of community assemblies is just one vehicle to operationalize collaborative governance. It's just one tool, one model. And later on, I can talk to you about other models that are different from community assemblies, but community assemblies in essence are deeper forms of community listening sessions. And you're able to create participatory spaces where individuals, residents, community members can come together to learn, deliberate, align shared values, navigate trade-offs, and collectively make a set of decisions or make recommendations to decision makers and broader stakeholders to influence the actions of either government or community organizations. There are multiple assembly formats that are out there, but the three most common one are sort of like citizen assemblies, which are globally used. And so there are many case studies in Europe and the global south, where we're seeing citizen assemblies deployed for climate justice and climate coordination work. There was one that occurred between two olive countries of the global south, Mexico, our neighbor, being a part of that. And it was meant to set an agenda, climate agenda at a global scale in the south. And so these particular citizens assemblies are initiated by government, and oftentimes they give funding to a think tank or a research entity that often supports or works with government and institutions, and they conduct the citizen assemblies. And the process of inviting folks into the space is through a lottery or sortition, and they go through the census tract. So they look at, based on demographics, based on a particular criteria, they pick folks from the citizenry. And so, and it's a random email or a letter that you receive either from a local municipality or the mayor's office or the governor's office, or you might receive an invitation from the think tank, and folks would sort of opt in and they will complete the form requesting to participate in a citizen assembly. And I can share with you a couple examples later on in slides. One thing to know about citizen assemblies is that we haven't seen a lot of impact. We have seen them happen, but we haven't seen government institutions or decision makers actually respond to them. And they tend to be a lot more episodic than we would like. There's not so much a continuum to them. And when it comes to movement assemblies, those are initiated by community members, and they're used as coalition building or mobilizing or agenda setting by community members who choose to organize themselves. Government is not involved at all. There are ones that happen in the South here, specifically in Jackson, where they have conducted movement assemblies and were able to set a political agenda, vote on that political agenda, and actually elect a mayor someone who participated in assemblies ended up running for mayor, and they ran on the agenda, on the political agenda that came out of the movement assembly they participate in. And these are those grassroots mobilizing that we see, and they're also called movement assemblies. The one we use here in Washington that we have seen funded by not just the state, but at the city level in the city of Seattle are called community assemblies, and they're sort of like a hybrid. And so government invests in them, they make available the resources, and they agree that they're going to receive and be the recipients of the recommendations and the community asks that come out of it. And then a community organization or a community-based organization is partnered with where the funding is awarded, and they're the ones who anchor the assembly, and we call those community organizations assembly anchors. In that sense, there isn't a sortition. They don't pluck people from the census. Instead, they rely on the relationships they have, the communities that they serve, and localize the invitation. And so they choose if they would sort of invite by calling anyone they know that they've been building relationship with. So the outreach is relationship based. You just don't receive a random letter or email to opt in. You're actually invited in. That is an opportunity for us to think about civic health differently and really use relationship-based invites to invite people into the space. These assemblies specifically are multi-session. That means there must be a number of hours or a number of sessions that participants must spend together. That way, it's different from a listening session. And so the ones we have partnered up with the city of Seattle and the state, we made sure that there were at least 2 days and a total of 9 hours total that folks would spend time together. And so this is meant for the conversation to evolve, for folks to get time to spend, share the space together, to break bread, to be able to align values and have a conversation around their lived experience. And then choose among themselves topics that they want to filter through, and then prioritize the topics that they want to engage in deep conversation and deliberation around. The most 3 important components of the assembly sessions is that there must be structured deliberation, there must be a strong facilitator, there must be some breakout group work, there must be some prompt questions that gets really to the core of the conversation, and then make decisions around some of the priorities they would like to put forth as a collective. And the solutions must be co-created and serve a common good purpose. Topics can be chosen for the assembly by the organizer, so that's easier to sort of take through the prompt and the questions and know who will receive or will be in receivership of the recommendations, or they can allow the participants to really pick what the topic would be that resonates with the majority of who's attending. And so some examples we have seen of participatory practices, which assemblies are part of a function of that. The first one was a participatory budgeting assemblies where in the early 90s in Porto Alegre, Brazil, and it's still in use actually today, and it's one of the longest models of community assemblies that we have been able to learn about. They've been able to decide where the community wants to invest its dollars in, and they've been able to sort of sustain that decision making. So it's basically the community deciding where government should invest, whether it's in education, in affordable housing, healthcare, and things like that. In terms of this particular assembly, the community assemblies we do, we're not deciding where budget goes. We're deciding where programs should be. We're deciding where potential policy solutions can be and where investments can be made. The movement assembly I spoke to you earlier about is Jackson, Mississippi. It has been happening since the 1990s and is still ongoing. An organization called Project South really anchors those, and there's a lot of Southern movement building assemblies that communities are using to create civic muscle and nurture civic health. Wisconsin Conservation Congress has one that is sort of ongoing to advise a particular agency, which is pretty unique. But it's sort of this ongoing participatory process for residents and neighbors to participate in, where they give ongoing feedback or recommendations to a particular agency. There's another one in Belgium where the citizens do not just inform an agency, they inform the parliament and they set legislative agenda setting. Now, these are just other forms of assemblies. The unique thing is that they must be deliberation, they must be shared alignment of values, they must be some sort of decision-making power there where they can recommend, and they must propose it to a decision maker. There are different ways to organize them, and they can be scaffolded together. They can be citywide assemblies, they can be community assemblies, which ours is more neighborhood based, but it is agnostic of scale. And so community assemblies that we're sort of socializing in Washington are agnostic of topic and agnostic of community. So it just depends on civic health and collectively making decisions together. And so it can be used through engagement committees, community dialogues, between design workshops, data gathering instrument. The utility is vast here. And so what makes it collaborative is that you have residents and community members who bring in lived experience. You have anchor organizations who are community-based grassroots or actors who have boots on the ground, who work on building relationships and nurturing the connective tissue of communities. And then there's government partners who fund and resource these assemblies, but also have the power to make real commitments and act on those outcomes. And then there are movement partners, which are basically the think tanks that assemblies, citizen assemblies utilize. But in this case, it's sort of nonprofits who don't do organizing or coalition building. So at PAL, for example, we work with community leaders, residents, and agencies to think about better models. And we're always researching and sharing those strategies and models out there. So in this case, we've been able to push the state and the city of Seattle to invest in these assemblies and recognize and codify them as a deeper form of community engagement and listening session. Collaboration is truly hard because we must be intentional. We must be consistent in time because trust isn't built in just one meeting. And there must be transparency. It isn't that, you know, some folks will meet and they will come back and then inform the rest. We want this to be as collaborative as possible. We want information to be shared in shared hubs or documents. There must be shared ownership of outputs and outcomes. And there must be a capacity for tension and differences and mitigating through them, as well as investing in relationships and not just processes. I know things are often deadline oriented and there's finite funding for it. This is meant to sort of consider nudging or adding more timeline for relationship building by humanizing the process. We know that budget cycles are pretty set and deadlines, so this requires forward thinking. So the assemblies we initiate today might not be able to inform the upcoming budget session, but they may be able to inform the next upcoming session. So you want to build some pace to it so that you're realistic and manage expectations. This also requires for you to go back to those community residents and make sure that they're tethered to the process. So whether that's a monthly update, a quarterly update, there must be some sense of being able to follow where the community's recommendations are going. So think about a report, a dashboard, ways to be able to track progress. This is sort of a visual map of sort of how participants are selected. There must be a very solid opportunity for folks to introduce one another, to share what is bringing them into the space, and what do they hope to walk away with? What would success look like for them? Enable them to set community agreements and some sort of cadence because they'll be spending some time together and deliberating. There must be an opportunity to be able to learn about a particular topic or invite testimony. We had a couple of assemblies where firefighter chiefs and captains were able to join and really share what they experience when they respond to a fire and the health challenges that they, you know, that happens to them that's often debilitating. and lifelong. And then there must be deep sense of conversation. Folks need to weed through the ideas, and they need to be able to leave, gestate with those ideas and come back and continue to evolve those ideas. And then lastly is for them to have the opportunity to put those ideas into action by proposing mitigating circumstances or programs for their community or policy gaps that they see in accessing a particular resource or service. But ultimately, you will the organization that anchored the assembly as well as the government entity that funded it would have a set of recommendations that they would need to respond to. And that is the next phase, which itself can inform strategic plans, program policies, and investment decisions. And that body of work can be a milestone tracking for years to come. A couple examples. So there, when City of Seattle was doing its comprehensive plan last year, they invested in 2 assemblies. One specifically was a climate justice impact on extreme weather. And we worked with labor, MLK Labor, who organizes many unions, and they hosted 3 sessions on 3 consecutive weeks for 3 hours on a Thursday evening. Each of those sessions had testimonials. So we had folks who worked in home care, we had teachers, we had firefighters, we had construction workers, we had the postmen, and they spoke a lot about the impacts of extreme weather, heat, and as well as extreme cold when they're doing their job, but whether it's inside a building or outside. And they were able to put together a set of recommendations. Another assembly that happened was around community resiliency for climate, and that was conducted by Urban Link. They met for 6 hours, 2 consecutive days. So remember I said they have to spend significant time together, 9 hours plus, or 2 to 3 sessions. And theirs specifically was around residents. And so they reached out to organizations that they worked with and let them know what criteria of folks they were seeking. And theirs was also place-based. And so all those recommendations went in to inform the comprehensive plan. And then this year, the City of Seattle invested in 2 additional assemblies to update the 2013 climate plan, which is around youth voices, which they didn't gather previously, and urban, native, and indigenous voices. And so they're continuing to use the assemblies as a way to inform both the climate portion of the comprehensive plan and the climate action plan for the city itself. Ultimately, what I want to leave you with is that in this time and age, our civic health and our civic muscle requires us to make an investment in democracy, and assemblies help do that. All these images are from those assemblies. People leaned in when they were invited. They didn't just bring to the space their concerns. They brought their ideas. They brought their hopes for the future. And they were able to cross-pollinate their ideas and really workshop them into comprehensive and targeted policy, program, and investment solutions. And so I want to pause here. I will share these slides with you all and send over a couple readings. Because I know this, this is a very easy concept to understand, but it's one that requires really strategic way of operationalizing it. It's more than just creating an investment. It's thinking about how, as initiators of assemblies, you also become partners that are scaffolded in to the collaborative experience. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really interesting.
Oh,
Do you have
please go ahead.
questions? Go ahead. Yeah. Who's got questions for Fatima? Let's go first. See anybody there? Oh. Okay, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I took quite a few notes on this. I have my wheels are spinning a little bit, thinking about how applying this, right? Thinking about the city's advisory boards and how they function. We're finishing up our comprehensive plan, but that doesn't mean we're not working on things all the time. And so I'll be I'll read over the material you send over. I'm very curious about trying this out, actually. Yeah, that's not really a question. I just wanted to say that. Very very
you.
interested in this. This is I think the ownership factor of it is I think is very important because sometimes people come to those meetings and they feel that they leave that they don't have ownership over their ideas and policy. And so I think that there's a lot of I could see a lot of benefit to that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I don't know if anyone else.
Yeah, I was curious about, oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. I also don't know if I have a question, but I wanted to echo what Robert's statements were. I found this to be really interesting, and seeing some of the examples that you provided, they were not surprising and they were inspiring, like the fact that workers' unions are mobilizing and organizing some of these assemblies. Those are exactly the kinds of groups that really get good work done. So this was an excellent presentation, and I also took a lot of notes, and I'm thinking about ways that we can implement or support some of these assemblies. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the citizens' assemblies being organized by government and not being very impactful. That's also not a huge surprise to me, knowing that there are so many groups stretched thin, and government is in many cases trying to do the best we can by putting together groups of community members to help advise. But then if we don't use their feedback, it can be not only unproductive, but in some cases harmful, because you've then asked a lot of people with lived experience to come together and share those difficult experiences and challenges and put a lot of thought into it. And then if we don't do anything with it, it's harmful because it can degrade trust. So thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily. You're right on. You know, when community feels unheard, we recently heard from a group in Okanagan, and they said that they get funding to do a lot of listening sessions, but they don't feel like they're being heard. So they're thinking about more action-oriented organizing assemblies, because it allows you to create a report that you own. And it's not just recommendations you present and give to your funder, but there's also an ownership from the organization themselves. And one thing I would like to tell you is that, you know, what comes out of it is the body of the work. You know, the assemblies allow you to build a relationship, to be able to ask people not only what keeps them awake at night, but also what targeted responses could be made to improve their daily experience of life. And so in that way, there's ownership and handoff of trust that occurs with the assembly anchor. And so we empower the community organization and we work with them to make sure that they're able to ideate on it. And so with MLK Labor and Urban League, we just didn't write the report and present it to the city. We called MLK Labor and Urban League back and we said, hey, what is your level of ownership towards the recommendations that were bestowed upon you by community members, beyond passing them on to the city? And we were able to partner with them to identify funding in the same agency to create workshops, to start thinking about each of the individual recommendations and what is needed to move from outputs to outcomes. And we call them to community to policy accelerator workshops, where issue aligned other agencies are invited, because the recommendations are just beyond one agency or one organization. They can invite other community organizations to say, hey, this is what we did. This is the ask of the same neighbors that you have, the same community that you serve. How can you help us sort of merge our ideas and strategy together? And so I would say if you guys are thinking about investing in assemblies, think about the next phase as well. Like what conditions are you creating for them to work with you, to work with the specific agency, to resource the work, to keep ideating so that outputs can become true outcomes. Thank you. Tom, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you again very much, Fatima. I want to also appreciate Commissioner Klaus's interest in this. I think that's terrific, and I just wanted to let you know we've didn't mean to jump the gun here at all, but we actually have had conversations also with Commissioner Mejia about this topic, and I'm going to be meeting with her on Monday. So if you want to, kind of be part of that meeting or chime in or whatever, I just wanted to let you know about that. We're meeting about this on Monday. Also, I was very taken by the point that you made about longevity of these efforts, right? That you're building relationships and you have to stick with it for a while to have it really make a difference. And I noticed that the 4 examples that you gave from this country and other countries all had a pretty good longevity to them. And I sense that you're working toward that with some of the groups that you're working with in Seattle as well. How does that longevity kind of get funded, or how does it get supported over time? Is it primarily through government or other sources, or what kind of things? What are your thoughts about that? And how are you working on that support of financial and other kinds of support that's needed in order to make sure that that continues on for over a period of time?
Tom, great question. So 2 ways based on the 4 examples. The 4 examples I shared. For example, the one in Brazil, Porto Alegre, they've been doing it for so long that they are basically now an instrument with government to continue to source input and collaboration from community on how to invest dollars. And so that itself is sort of participatory budgeting. The city of Seattle has invested in that unsuccessfully. They haven't been able to get dollars out because there has to be a commitment, not just to do the process, but to really, even if you don't agree, or community is saying, put these millions of dollars in, you have to follow through. So that commitment here has been lacking. But in Porto Alegre in Brazil, they were able to make a push, and they had champions within government who recognized that guiding these, because essentially they're tax dollars, and that they had to fulfill the ask, that ultimately these were taxpayers, and they leaned into that. That's the most perfect example that we have. Unfortunately, that model has not been that level of trust have not been replicated elsewhere, unfortunately. And that's due to a lot of reasons, right? Elected officials feel like they must make the paid choice, that they've been anointed to sort of oversee these funding. And so they haven't been able to open a corridor of trust in that way. But in terms of like Mississippi People's Assembly, that doesn't include government at all, and they've been able to use philanthropy funding or fundraising from community to invest in those movement assemblies as a way to set agendas for community by community, so they can go advocate that agenda with their legislators. In terms of Wisconsin conservation, what they did was similar to what Robert was saying. They basically empower an advisory body, and they called them an assembly. But it's iterative enough, and they have recommendation and decision-making power to really inform and integrate their recommendations into government. So they're sort of like a standing body of assembly participants. And so they're given participation stipends by government. So it's built into an advisory body. They didn't partner with a community organization and say, you hold these relationships, can you bring community residents? So in some ways, there's a positive and negative to it because there isn't enough circulation of ideas happening. It's sort of informing current action that the government is doing, similar to advisory body. But nonetheless, they're deliberative enough, errative enough for them to be an assembly. The other one in Belgium, it's funded by parliament. It's similar to a body, but they inform the parliament directly. The only assemblies right now that we know that government funded and they allowed community to implement and hold the design and implementation of it is in Washington State. And it took us 3 years working across the state, working with DOH, working with DHS and other agencies, socializing for 3 years to be able to convince the Climate Justice Council to invest $2 million to it. So they haven't invested again. They haven't given us more funding to take the outputs to outcomes. We're doing that on our own. To even propose the assembly, those funding came from philanthropy. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funded us for 3 years in partnership with the state agency. And then we were able to go for implementation dollars, but we weren't given additional dollars to iterate on it. So we're going back to philanthropy to keep the pipeline alive. One thing I would suggest for your group is to think about that comprehensive funding, that multi-year funding. Specifically, if you feel like you need to build a relationship with a philanthropic partner, because we are doing as much as possible to socialize this so that in the next couple of years, there'll be more funders in this ecosystem. We have been working with the HEAL agencies at the state. We have vetted their engagement plans. We have vetted their implementation plans. And we gave them key recommendations on how to take their engagement spectrum, which they have, and elevate it a little deeper through long-lasting relationships. And we see some movement, but there definitely needs to be a cultural shift. And culture shift is led by people. And unfortunately, with all the budget cuts right now, we're seeing capacity being challenged in those ways. But we are socializing them with philanthropy. And if Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funds the next iteration of this work, we plan to take that case study to other funders and say, it's time to cut a check for multi-year investments in community organizations, because that's what the other side does. They invest 5-10 years to be able to move their agenda. And on this side of the progressive court, we are episodic. And we want to move away from that. We want them to make long-term investments in community organizations so that they can hold these relationships long-term. I hope, Tom, that's helpful.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Well, this was very good. Anybody else have questions? This is, yeah, I'm in the Robert realm. Just my mind is spinning here on the possibilities and how this could be used. And I'm looking forward to the report from Paris and from how this has worked in the project from TCAT, how this works for what you guys are working on right now. So to see how this works, yeah, this will be good work. So thank you. So do we have any other questions then? Does anybody? We ready to move on? No, Robert, here we go.
You're muted, Robert.
I have one more, and I think this is
Yeah,
kind of a
of
thought
course,
process
yeah.
that I've had is, and I think when for like our community advisory boards, the city, one of the things that we run into is that I think the hardest thing is to have new voices involved, and I think that I see the need to have a continuous meeting, continuing to be open to the public, but I'm always looking to find ways to bring in people that are not involved at all in the community, like at all. Like they're not involved in neighborhood associations, they're not involved in any sort of external or internal organization. So I'm very curious your thought process on trying to get those people that are, I don't know, they live really busy lives. It's hard to get them involved, but I really want to get their views involved because we have a highly participatory group of people that exist in our community, but then there's a lot of people who are just not involved. And I really I want to expand where we are. I'm just curious if you've run into any of that issue while going through the process in other cities or any other organizations or is there any advice around that problem?
Yeah, there are definitely assumptions around how busy people are. I've seen some organizations say, well, people are busy. They don't have time to come and think, and we must do the thinking for them. And so we must give them things to respond to instead of things that they have us respond to. And so assumptions is one way we have seen deep deliberative conversations and engagements get sort of kicked out of the agenda. Another thing is timeline and budget cycles, especially if you're given $15,000, $10,000 to do a listening session. It's not the same as doing multi-day session with facilitators, with prompts, with supplies. Think about a board meeting, right? Think about when organizations ask board or directors to come together and do a retreat. Think about how much investment goes into facilitation, how much investment goes to create an environment where they can unplug from other things and really give strategic, pointed expert advice. We must give community members the same respect and sort of work commitment to that because we want to generate ideas. One thing I would say is that these type of conversations allow folks to really share with you truly the way they're experiencing an issue on the ground. So you're able to walk away not just with the numbers, which you already have through, the disparities health map and other reports, but the anecdotal stories, the narratives. And what we have seen is that when that narrative, that story is coupled with the policy proposal, policies are much more successful. For example, MK Labor did that session. For years, they have been trying to pass mechanical insulation inspection for new buildings so that there are ways to protect pipes from rusting during the winter because they freeze. And they've been recommending mechanical insulation to mitigate that. Once they did the assemblies, they had enough the stories and the people to put those stories into policy, went to King County, had that passed, and it became one of a kind nationwide policy that they were able to get mechanical installation inspection done when plumbing inspection happened. So now new buildings their pipes won't burst. They won't freeze. And so that way we have seen a good way to marry the potential for storytelling to the way we pursue a successful proposal or policy. But it's not perfect, Robert. This is a space that's still developing. And now other states are looking to us like a leader, but we're still trying to figure out how to finish the work we have started and not just having done assemblies is not enough. I hope that's helpful. I'm gonna chat away one of our partners who had done some deep research with Partners of Dignity Rights. They have assemblies tool, examples of different assemblies, including the ones that happened in Washington and the city of Seattle. And I think I've taken too much of your time. Thank you so much for having me, and definitely feel free to email me and I can share more resources.
Thank you so much, Faduma.
Yeah,
This was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good session.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is very, very helpful, very informative.
For a minute. Right, well, then with that, we will move on to our agenda. And so the next item that we have up is the TCMC ILA amendments. And we will have Rebecca Harvey. Take it away, Rebecca.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Harvey with Thurston County. Can you see my screen already?
Not yet.
No.
We can see you.
Oh, I see. Teams has a new little gadget here to makes it easy to
Yeah.
share.
Yep.
Now I'm sharing it. See the full screen?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I am here representing the staff team to bring you an amended draft of the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative Interlocal Agreement. And sorry, let me just switch my windows one more time. Okay, I think I'm good now. So for your consideration, discussion, and potential approval this evening, this interlocal agreement, I may use the acronym ILA, is the overarching legal contract that sets the terms of our collaborative work to implement the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan through 2030. So the requested action of the committee today is to review and approve the updated interlocal agreement to support regionally coordinated implementation of the TCMP. The existing ILA was executed by the 4 jurisdictions in late 2023, and it was intended to provide a framework for regional collaboration through 2030. This ILA lays out the terms of the collaboration, including its purpose, its scope, funding commitment, process for amending. And Exhibit A to the ILA is the Regional Implementation Guidance document, which provides more detailed information on the process of implementation, roles and responsibilities of the groups involved, as shown here in the Venn diagram on the slide, and the collaborative activities, including the annual retreat process for identifying regional initiatives, facilitation of the executive committee and community advisory work group, and regular greenhouse gas inventories. And we discussed this at the retreat last month on September 19th. The TCMC has learned and evolved in the 2 years since that ILA was adopted. We have successfully advanced our first regionally coordinated initiatives, while simultaneously each of the jurisdictions has implemented numerous projects on their own to advance the goals and strategies of the TCMP. And we discussed how implementation responsibilities are growing while staff time and funding resources remain limited. We also discussed how the current approach to the TCMC is administratively burdensome, which diverts funding and staff time from implementation actions. We had really good group discussion on that, and these are the issues that we are addressing with the proposed amendments to the ILA. So this draft follows, sorry, this is Juju. He wants to be involved here. Can't have a meeting without Juju. Just be quiet. So it follows up on the July 28th Executive Committee meeting when we presented initial recommendations for the updates, followed by a discussion among the CAW on August 19th, and then by the full TCMC at the retreat. And the staff team finalized the draft updates based on the feedback provided at all of these meetings. So I will now go through and summarize the major changes that were made to the ILA, and as well as the additional changes to the regional implementation guidance. In your packet, you have the marked up drafts, and Eleanor was also kind to send clean drafts of both today in your email as well. So those might be easier for you to look through and read, because there are quite a lot of markups in the marked up drafts. So here on this slide is the first of the significant changes, which is in section 4.1, titled Regional Initiatives. The original ILA was kind of vague about what it meant to work together on climate mitigation actions, So we made the language more specific by adding the term regional initiatives, which aligns with the regional implementation guidance in Exhibit A that provides more details on the processes for regional initiatives. And importantly, this section specifies the conditions under which regional initiatives can be advanced without needing a separate ILA. I would say this was one of the most key changes and most important reasons for updating the ILA was that we would not need a separate ILA each time we moved forward with a different regional initiative like we did for Energize Thurston. We had a separate ILA for that, which is time consuming to develop. So it sets the conditions that those initiatives can be advanced under this existing document agreement, which are that the project be developed and implemented through the TCMC staff team, the project be included in the biennial TCMC work plan and estimated budget, which I'll describe more in a moment, and also that project funding is allocated by the parties through the approval and adoption of their respective budgets. So we've had this reviewed by the cities and the counties legal teams, and it all checks out. So we're excited to have a more streamlined process moving forward. And so then the next change is in section 4.3 on TCMP updates. Following the feedback provided at the retreat, the language was changed to eliminate the 2026 administrative update and to state that minor administrative updates may occur at any time. And it gives the executive committee authority to delay or cancel a TCMP update if they determine it is not needed at that time. So you're going to see this word a lot, flexibility. This is really the in addition to the streamlining and not needing additional agreements for initiatives, our overarching goal here is to really just add more flexibility to our processes going forward. So similarly with the greenhouse gas inventory, it was revised to be more flexible in scope and frequency to align with the decision that the executive committee made last year to reduce the frequency of greenhouse gas inventories from every year to every 3 years with dash inventories in between. And it also went a step further in our changes here to also allow for the TCMC to obtain a greenhouse gas inventory for a different entity if that's available, rather than to conduct a separate one ourselves. And specifically, we're thinking of the greenhouse gas inventories that are now being done at the county level by the Washington Department of Commerce as part of the comprehensive planning process. So it enables this change, and there's more details on this in the regional implementation guidance, to allow the TCMC to obtain that external inventory if it's recommended by the staff team and approved by the executive committee. And then it revises the frequency of inventories to 3 to 5 years. And Commerce has said that they will do those inventories every 5 years. So that would enable using those existing inventories and saving quite a bit of staff time that way. And then in the funding section, we added language allowing the staff team to provide a biennial work plan and budget, including all planned collaborative activities and costs. And it states that the parties' approval and adoption of their respective budgets serves as commitment to fund their share of the agreement. And again, it allows flexibility here in contracting rather than saying City of Lacey will contract for administrative services or Thurston County will contract for greenhouse gas inventory services. It just allows flexibility for any party to contract for services and invoice the other parties. We added a new section called reallocation of funds due to budget reduction, and this enables more flexibility to proceed with the collaborative work in the case that not all parties may participate. And this is just being mindful of potential budget constraints that might come down the line, and would add provisions. It adds provisions for if one of the parties were to fail to secure funding for any one of the regional initiatives or other activities in the work plan, the other parties could still go forward with that activity. And likewise, if that party decides to opt out for any reason. And finally, we changed the notice clause to allow for notice to be sent by email or by postal mail. Kind of bringing it up to the 21st century there. And then the regional implementation guidance document, which is the more detailed Exhibit A, integrates all of those changes with additional details added, clarifies language in some cases, and it makes a few additional specific revisions, which were also discussed at the retreat. And those include reducing the CAW meetings to quarterly with the option of adding up to 2 additional CAW meetings. It revises the frequency of TCMP progress reports to approximately every 3 years. And it allows the annual retreats to be optional. Again, just adding flexibility into there depending on the need in any given year. And specifies, just a minor thing, that the process for selecting regional initiatives is recommended. So we just made some language changes again to just make it more flexible. And so that's the summary. And we have 3 decision options for the committee to consider. One is to recommend approval of the ILA as is. 2 is to recommend approval with any changes that you suggest and agree on. And 3 would be to not recommend approval of the new ILA. Thank you for your time, and I will open it up to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for that presentation. All right, team. So we've had a presentation. We've talked about this. So where are we with our taking it to your councils? Have you had a chance to, where are you on that part yet?
I could speak for, sorry, Melissa. I could speak real quick for Thurston County. Is I put it on the consent agenda for November 12th. And I need to first update the board with an email brief and engage the board and see if there are any questions, if it, then kind of go through our process to see if it gets approved on that consent agenda. Whatever the other staff team members, would you like to type in with your plan?
I've brought it to Public Works Committee last week, and they moved to put it on the consideration agenda on November 3rd for City Council.
For Olympia, this is currently scheduled for council action on November 18th.
Is it the 18th?
Similar time frame, 18th for us as well, is what we're hoping on to get it on. Although, yeah, 18th of November.
Right. All right, everyone. So we have it. Let's put a note in there.
Emily has her hand up also.
Emily, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't quite catch Tumwater's timeline.
I think we're the 3rd. We were
November 3rd, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we want to bring it to consideration because I want our council to have a chance to, we're trying to bring everything climate. So we had a chance to see the good work that the jurisdictions are all doing and how collaborative this all is. And so, yeah, anytime I can bring this forward, I want to show how much work everyone's doing. So Tom, please.
Yeah, I don't want to be talking out of order necessarily here, but I did have a couple of questions. I don't remember, maybe this came up. I'm here as a CAW representative also, and don't remember if this came up at the Community Advisory Work Group meeting, but I assume I was thinking about I noticed the option for using other sources for doing the greenhouse gas inventory, which I think is a great idea. One technical thing that might entail there is since we're mapping our I'm getting some feedback here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Since we're mapping our targets to 2015 baseline, does that assume that whatever greenhouse gas inventory we use, say it's from Department of Commerce, does that assume we would then go back and have a comparison using the same methodology the Department of Commerce used? Hopefully Department of Commerce, for example, has a greenhouse gas inventory for 2015 that we could then map back to and see how we're doing with regard to that baseline. So that's one question that kind of came up for me. And the other is, you've heard from me about this previously, probably more times than you care to think about, but the fact that we have to streamline certain things implies that, to me, that, for example, with community input, if we're having fewer meetings, does that mean we're getting less community input? And maybe so, and maybe that's what's needed. But it comes down, in my mind, it comes down to a limitation of resources, financial resources primarily, but all other resources as well. And so that's just something I think that the collaborative as a whole should think about and see what solutions we have for expanding the resources rather than assuming that we've got a limited pie. Why not bake a bigger pie? Find a way to do that. So that's my comment on that.
Thank you, Tom. I can speak to the greenhouse gas inventory question. It's a good point you raised. We did not address the baseline explicitly in the ILA. Again, we're making these changes to make as much flexibility going forward. So that is something we will need to consider. We do have a full TCMP update coming up in 2028, so that methodology might be reconsidered potentially. I think that there's a strong argument to make for keeping the 2015 baseline as it is. So we would look at that as we're updating the plan in 2028, possibly with new targets and new time horizons to line up with the state guidance and the comprehensive plans as well. But yes, if we go back, if we do decide to continue to use 2015 as a baseline, we would need to make comparable inventories going backwards, which could be done. We did something similar on a smaller scale when we did the 2023 and 2022 inventory with ICLEI for the first time. ICLEI went back and kind of shored up the previous inventories to make them match the current methodology. So you can do that retroactively. Yes, is it Eileen or Alyssa in your room? Someone had a comment?
My understanding of Department of Commerce's guidance for the climate element is that we must use 2022 for our baseline year for climate element reporting, and that might be a conversation that we have when we do that update to modernize our targets, because we all have different targets now in our draft climate elements that are more ambitious, is my understanding, than the TCMP shared targets, and potentially discussion of changing the baseline year to be consistent with Commerce's requirements so that we aren't judging our emissions by two different baselines twice. That would, I think, be confusing for the general public, but that'll be a conversation that we, of course, have, as that can have ramifications and also erode trust if we do that without talking to others. More of a statement than a question or an answer.
And as far as the community engagement piece, that's also a good question. And I recall some discussion about this at the retreat, that if we are, as we are scaling back the number of CAW meetings, there would still be opportunities for the CAW as a group or as subgroups or subcommittees to work kind of offline in between those meetings. So it might, reduce the overall convening of the full CAW, but provide more maybe creative or just different ways of engaging in the meantime. And also, we're not changing the executive committee cadence and would continue to put out the, public meeting notices, of course. So the public is encouraged to engage in these meetings. Do any other staff team members want to comment on Tom's questions?
I'll just note that when we've done the regional initiatives in the past, generally community engagement is part of the scope of developing those. So beyond the CAW and the EC, we do additional community engagement and outreach when we're developing policies or programs as needed related to those particular work items that we're working on. So there's community engagement that happens just as part of us making progress. Then there's the standing regular community engagement that happens through the CAW and the EC public comment. So hopefully we're still engaging the community quite a bit, perhaps even through community assemblies that we just heard about, to make sure that people are involved, invited, and welcome to share their thoughts on whatever work that we're doing.
So I guess my point was that however we're doing community engagement takes some money, takes some time, takes some resources, right? And it seems to me that that's really what we're dealing with here is limitation of those resources. And so my question is, how do we expand those resources?
We still use staff time to do outreach as well. It doesn't always need a professional facilitator consultant. We do have some strengths for different qualitative methods and quantitative methods within the staff team's expertise as well. But we likely won't have a robust answer for your question right off the bat.
Robert.
I can't speak for everyone in here, but we just had Tom, we just had that presentation on community assemblies, and I'm still thinking about that, and I'm thinking about what about the city of Olympia and what we can do around the future of our advisory boards, because we just had was it 3 months ago, we had a meeting where we brought all the advisory boards in to talk. And so I can only speak on what we're thinking about as a council. And so I'm thinking about what we can do around internally. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking about right now. Ways to engage and use our resources in a way that, the best example is when we're doing the comp plan. And I don't want this to be a long thing, but the best example I had is when we were doing the comp plan, we'd have different advisory groups reviewing the same chapter with the same staff. And some of the thoughts we had were, why don't we just have all of the different groups in the same room to talk about the same thing rather than having repeat conversations, and then have more collaborative conversations out of that. So the other part of this, I am going to go to the event that's coming up in November. So I'm going to learn a little bit from that too. So I can't come up with an answer right now, but I'm open ears.
Emily.
Thank you. I was thinking along the same lines as you, Robert, in response to Tom's question. Tom, I'm happy to chat with you if you want to kind of brainstorm ideas. It's good knowing that you're going to be talking with Commissioner Mejia about the community assemblies concept as well, because I really do think that with the resources being so constrained, and we're thinking about this in lots of areas, right? Like, you had an example of the comp plan. also thinking of an example, we're kind of having similar discussions in like Orca when we talk about the core grants not coming through through ecology. And I'm just kind of thinking about ways that the community can engage around some of these issues where funding is uncertain, but the work still needs to be done. And I was really happy. Rebecca, I think you did a really good job with this update. I was happy to see how you implemented all of the various pieces of feedback from the retreat. I know we had two separate groups, but in our group, one thing we were talking about when we had those slips, I don't remember exactly how we did it, but we had these like slips with different priorities that we were looking at. And one of them was something related to like participatory action or something. Maybe I'm connecting it to what I thought of, but basically getting the community to engage more with each other through like peer-based models, because sometimes, and this speaks back to what you mentioned earlier, Robert, sometimes the best way to get engaged with people who are not involved already is through peer networks. Because if people care about climate, which they do, they care a lot, we can kind of leverage the concern that already exists in the community and try to bring groups together for collaboration around solutions when funding is lacking. So I also don't have an answer, but I do feel like inspired by this paradigm shift that we seem to be on the cusp of, that kind of propels us in the direction of like utilizing resources outside of the system that is kind of crumbling, which is like the federal and statewide financial landscape. So I'm happy to talk more about how like we can use that community assemblies concept to kind of build support around this when we might not know what the funding is going to look like.
Thank you for Commissioner. I'm thinking about that as well, just how I want to applaud like the whole comp plan process, how the different voices and how all the jurisdictions, how we've been able to get different people involved in this process that you think that we've never been able to get involved before. And so I just want to applaud, because you think people don't want to be involved, but clearly they do want to be involved. And so I love this idea of the community assemblies and how to use them more. And Robert, you talking about, why didn't we have everybody in the room at the same time? Just to, you're talking is like to get more people. So my mind is spinning as well as far as how we can utilize these groups. When sources are limited, when funding is limited, there are clearly people that how do we continue this engagement? So thank you for that. Good discussion here. Oh, Robert, there you go. Okay.
So, Tom, I think the other part of your question, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was about financing, right? About making sure there's stable financing in the future, not just for community involvement, but like in general as an organization, right? Is that correct? Maybe not. Because
Yes,
that is a
correct.
real thing that we have to think about, right? Is stable, consistent funding that isn't just a general fund funding, right? That is a funding like a district source, right? And so I'm thinking about that quite often, including in C-Rise, which some of us are on, but those are things that we have to think about is into the future is what is the stable, consistent funding source for all the work we got to do? I'm sorry to cut you off, Tom.
No, I was just trying to respond. Yes, that's correct. But I will say, even community assemblies takes some financial investment to really get those rolling and make them successful. So I think it's a wise investment, and because it will expand other areas of resource and activity and enthusiasm and commitment within the community. But you gotta plant some seeds with dollars, right? And so it does take some of that.
And I appreciate you, Tom, because that has always been the years that I've known you and we've been working on this is that to keep that in the forefront. It is because it is important. It is it's always having the money to do a sustainable funding to be able to keep this good work going. So I appreciate you reminding us and that you still champion that idea. So keeping that in the forefront. So thank you. Well, let's see. So do we have any other discussion here on this? We do have an action item before us. The staff did recommend that we approve the amended TCMC interlocal agreement. And so do we have someone who would like to make a motion to approve? Looking for a motion?
I move to approve the amended ILA as presented.
Good. Get a second from Carolyn. Is that a victory vote? She's seconding. So, all right. All right. So all those in favor signify saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you so much. We approve this and we'll take it to our councils and get this all approved. So thank you for your work on this, staff. This has been a lot of work and I appreciate your efforts on this, getting us moved forward. So looking at our agenda now, we have our next item is the call updates. So we kind of had little tempting items from Tom on that, but do we have some call updates? Then we have Karen who's going to be taking that away for us. So
Yes, here, give me a second. The updates for the call are that the CAW has met twice since the last EC meeting, both in August and October. There was a break in September. In August, the CAW reviewed the scope of work for the 2026 regional initiative, and they provided feedback. And they also reviewed the proposed amendments to the ILA, which we reviewed tonight, and they agreed to proceed with the suggested changes. And then in the October meeting, we began working with the CAW on their 2026 work plan. So we were brainstorming topics for meeting agenda items and discussing how the CAW can work on furthering implementation of the climate actions even more than they're already doing. And so the CAW is going to be finalizing their work plan in November. And the reason there wasn't a meeting in September was because that was when we had the annual retreat. So we were all together, and with the call, the staff team and the EC, we had that amazing collaborative discussion and the activities, really brainstorming with the changing landscape, how we can better utilize the limited resources available to the TCMC. We talked about reducing staff hours on TCMC and relying more on community-led initiatives. And the CAW has continued to express interest in leading climate work, leading presentations. So, and taking a lot of it on themselves, and they will likely continue those discussions into the new year. And it was really great to see everyone at the retreat. It was amazing energy. I'm still happy, excited from it. And that's it.
Karen. Okay. And now that moves us on to our jurisdiction updates. And who would like to go first on jurisdiction updates? Well, let's see. Hey, Commissioner Klaus, we'll let you go first.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple here. So coming up on November 4th, we will be having our comprehensive plan public hearing. So that will take place at the Atrium, which is located at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast in Olympia. And that public hearing begins at 3:30 p.m. And we will be hearing the full draft of the comprehensive plan. We'll hold the public hearing on the full draft of the comprehensive plan, including the climate chapter and new development codes for EV infrastructure, solar energy systems, and battery energy storage systems. And this, as with all of our public hearings, members of the public can attend in person or virtually. And you can find the link to register and the full draft of the comprehensive plan at www.thurston2045.org. And then a second update, our board had a briefing on the home energy score model ordinance on October 15th and provided direction to our staff to conduct community outreach about the policy to county residents and to review the ordinance with affected county departments to discuss details of implementation. Staff will be returning to the board in spring 2026 for further consideration of the ordinance. We also have our 2 new level 2 electric vehicle chargers operational at the Sandstone Cafe in downtown Tenino. And that's located at 273 Sussex Avenue West. One more charging station will soon be installed at the Quarry House, and these are in addition to the 2 fast chargers and 2 level 2 chargers at the Ag Park in Tenino, which have been operational since July. And Thurston County is managing this project in partnership with the City of Tenino with grant funding from the Washington Department of Commerce. Next up, we have a update on the public health solar plus storage. As reported at the last executive committee meeting in July, the county received a clean energy community grant from Commerce to install a solar and battery storage system on the Public Health and Social Services building. The Central Services Department is now working with an engineering consultant, Wood Harbinger, to complete the final project design by February 2026. And then staff will advertise for construction contract bids with the goal of completing installation by December 2026. The project will provide clean, emissions-free energy to support our climate goals, provide backup power to the public health building during outages, and reduce the county's utility bills through electricity generation and storage. And let's see, the last one is the Healthy Forest Project update. The tree canopy assessment final report is nearly complete and will be shared with the board soon and then shared with the public, so stay tuned for that. And in addition, staff are beginning to implement the forest lands conversion ordinance, which was adopted last year. First steps are going to be reviewing permitting data, processes, and forms, and next we'll be developing educational fact sheets to raise public awareness about the new rules and requirements for forest conversion. And that is all I've got.
That's a lot.
We're
Yeah,
busy, we're
geez.
staying busy.
All right, Robert.
I got 3 things here, so it's not going to be too bad. Installation. So the solar energy system on the fire station 1 is now complete, which is really cool. If you're going up downstate or forth, you can see it on the roof. The system will generate approximately 145,000 kilowatts of renewable energy per year, which is pretty awesome. It's expected to meet 100% of the station's current energy needs, which is really cool. In its first year, the project is projected to reduce energy costs by about $22,000, which is awesome, resulting in an estimated savings of more than $550,000 over 25 years. So it is worth the investment entirely. It is supported and funded by the Washington Climate Commitment Act. With the support from a $120,000 Washington State EV charging program grant, the city is installing 8 level 2 chargers, 16 ports at 3 multifamily properties through a competitive process, but to ensure equitable access. The first installation is going to Harbor Heights downtown, 55 plus community. Additional sites are being planned for late 2025 and early 2026. Again, funded by the Climate Commitment Act. And here's a reminder that with the winter coming, higher flood risks in downtown, especially the king tides when they occur, with heavy rain and low air pressure, the city is encouraging residents and businesses to prepare by reviewing flood maps, signing up for the Thurston Community Alerts under Bud Inlet Flood Advisory, and developing personal and business response plans. The website for that is the olympiawa.gov/downtown flooding. So be prepared. It will happen, especially after this just a warning for folks, particularly after this last weekend, which was fun for everyone. The map, I will say, lastly, that map was crazy of all the outages. I was like, wow, that's all around me. Anyway, that's all I got.
All right, take it away, Lacey.
Okay, hey everybody. I'll be talking for Lacey, Lindsay Fields, Climate Sustainability Coordinator, since I didn't introduce myself on the first part. So I have just a couple updates. We restarted the Lacey PSE matching rebate program, so we're currently matching the fuel switch electrification rebates, which is if you're switching from PSE natural gas to a heat pump, you can get $4,000 with their matching rebate up to $8,000 to make that switch from natural gas to electric. We have about $124,000 from our climate implementation budget, which comes from the general funds, which is that $200,000 that Councilmember Cox was talking about that has been reappropriated for next year as well. So we'll still get the 200 for next year to do climate work, which is really exciting. Well, it's in the draft budget, but all signs point to yes for that. And then, so we're excited. That's about 31 homes that could potentially get that fuel switch rebate, so up to $8,000 to do that work. There's the potential to do more, but we're starting with that amount. And if we have high demand, we might go to like a as they come in, if we have the funding to sort of use up our funding that way, because we did reduce costs through the TCMC this year. So there might be, but right now we're shooting for 31. We'll see if we get that many. Like I said, we are looking good to get $200,000 again for climate action and climate implementation programs for 2026, which is really exciting, especially since we have a lot of resilience work to do now as well with the comp plan update, which reminds me that we have a recommendation from our planning council, which will go to, or I'm sorry, our planning commission, which will go to our council. It's looking like November 25th, I think, maybe for a work session. We're still working it out. Either the 18th or 25th to be for a work session. So the council will hear about our comp plan then, and then we're set to adopt by the end of the year. So we are right on schedule in terms of the comp plan to get that adopted before the end of 2026, which is really exciting because we've been working on that for almost 2 years, a year and a half. And then the other thing is, oh gosh, I just lost it. Oh, yes, next week, the 1st of November, we should hear from WashDOT if we have been selected for an e-bike lending library grant for our city employees. So we put the grant in early this year. Not early this month. They've been deliberating for like 2.5 weeks, and they said the 1st we should hear. So if you all could cross your fingers and your toes and put really great energy out into the universe, we could potentially get up to 40 e-bikes for our employees, which would be a game changer in terms of helping reduce our commute trips and get our employees into active transportation. So it would be a lease to ownership program. So there's the potential that they would then own the e-bike at the end, while also just creating really good e-bike habits to commute to work. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that we get it. We should hear next week. So we'll update you all as that happens and as that unfolds. Other than that, I think that's about it.
All right, thank you. All right, and I always like duck it. I just give it to Alyssa here. Let her take it for me.
We are working with Olympia Community Solar to put in 2 grant proposals for solar plus storage, one for our main fire station and another for the Tumwater Timberland Library, which is our only heating and cooling shelter in our city that doesn't have any backup power at all. And I've said that weird. It's our only heating and cooling shelter, period. It doesn't have backup power. We don't have any other heating and cooling shelter in the city. We've been working with a consultant to produce 3 videos of energized Thurston recipients in Tumwater that I think will benefit all of us. Hopefully I'm able to share those with our city council on November 3rd at our council meeting. We have been approved for a Civic Spark Fellow, so we will be hiring an 8-month fellow that will serve between January and September of next year, helping us kickstart our resilience aspects of our climate element, which is wonderful. And also we've been selected for another program. The Puget Sound Preparedness Collaborative Small Communities Cohort is going to be working with the city at no cost to the city to develop a vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan for climate hazards. Which is also super helpful. You've all heard quite a bit tonight about our community assemblies. We'll be having our next one on November 12th from 5:30 to 8:30 at Osho. Please use the register link on TCAT's website so that we make sure that we have adequate food for everybody and childcare. This is going to be the city's second time providing childcare at a public meeting. So bring your kiddo if you want them to participate or hang out while you participate. We want to reduce those barriers. And then the last, 2 more things. Public Works building, we are decarbonizing our HVAC system. That was a fun surprise from our facilities staff that they just are doing that, which is wonderful.
We didn't make them.
And the last bit is that I learned last week that we are going to be able to keep our federal grant that works, that helps us with our urban forestry work. It has equity in the title, but somehow we're getting to keep it for the full 3 years. So no complaints there.
Hey, team. Right. Well, good. A lot of good work out there, everyone. So it's amazing. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of the reports that talked about solar and energy efficiency and reducing energy costs and things like that. Recently did a calculation of if we achieve the 2030 goals for energy efficiency that's contained in the TCMP, which calls for a 20% reduction in electrical energy usage by, for households in residential buildings by 2030. If we achieve that goal, we will save residential customers in Thurston County $70 million every single year. $70 million. And that adds up to a little over $500 on average per customer. So there's a talking point, y'all. If you're trying to convince somebody, hey, we should maybe spend a little more time and attention on this, maybe spend a little bit of money on this, hey, that might be something that could help the conversation along. So just thought I'd offer that.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. It's always the dollar part. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, with that, do we have anything else that we'd like to share for the good of the order? No? Okay. Well, with that, then I will call the Monday, October 27th, 2025 TCMC Executive Committee meeting adjourned. And hopefully everybody has a warm house to go back to, and yeah, everybody's got their power back. So thank you to PSC and all their hard work and getting us all back up and running again. So thank you so much. And thank you, Karen, for the meeting, and everybody have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
So it looks like we're planning on adopting